integrated policy environment has helped a lot to India become more and more resilient and lucrative in the global charts, and now we are very much visible in the global and domestic arena in all the segments like the sports, economic growth, and we are the fastest moving economy not only for the current year but for the next 5-6 years if you go by the numbers provided by International Monetary Fund projections till 2028. We are the fastest moving economy in the world economic system, and our projections for the growth, for the exports are very, very lucrative, and we look forward that our government will provide a great handholding in future also to move forward with a great zeal and a great strength to become more and more strong in the global economy. So with these words, firstly I would like to request all the dignitaries on the dais and the delegates to rise for the national anthem. And Shri Sanjay Biswal. So now moving forward, and I request our former President Shri Anil Khaitan to provide the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. A very warm welcome to each one of you, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of PSU, a very good afternoon. Rajesh ji, Rajiv ji, Manoj ji, Sanjay ji, Dr. Bhasin, Dr. S.P. Sharma. It's a very important topic, we all know, and I think this is the biggest, one of the byproduct gifts, if you like, COVID gave to the world, is to reevaluate their supply chains. Because a lot of countries have become complacent in developing alternative supply chains. Say for our country itself, on the API with the pharmaceutical front. I mean, who stopped us from becoming Atmanirbhar 15 or 20 years ago? Sometimes years of API were announced, but there was no action taken. Anyhow, past is past. At least actions have been taken now. So, pandemic has really changed the focus, the concentration, emotional balances, financial, commercial, whatever. It has changed the entire world. And unfortunately, it just got succeeded by this wretched war which is going on. Now, I run a company, I've been only knowing industry. Now, we in the industry, we have to have minimum 3 to 4 sources of supply. I, as an industry or as a businessman, cannot depend on one source of supply. I can make partnerships with my supplier or a strategic partner, like say the Tatas do, the Evolve company, the L&T do it, Dr. Reddy Lab does it. They make strategic partners in vendors with their supply chain because of mutual trust, mutual confidence, which has come up because of huge amount of factors, quality, supply, whatever. So global value chain doesn't mean only supply. It means right from production, design, distribution, packing, getting the material to your customer's destination address, whatever the customer wants. That is the entire gamut of our global value supply chain. Now, so far as our country is concerned, in India, the central government is the key player in making the policies. But the state governments are equally responsible. Because if the states perform, then only the center performs. So, and the state in particular are responsible for land, for labor, for utilities, and for skill development, because skill development is another major issue, as Rajesh ji and I were briefly discussing. Another big advantage India has to become a GVS, a global value supply chain, is its location. It's an ideal location between Southeast Asia, East Asia, and to connect to Middle East, Europe, and maybe some other countries. So it's a very good facilitator of the trade. And the amount of Indian Ocean, I don't know in terms of territory as to how many thousand kilometers is the Indian territory in terms of Indian Ocean. So that's also a tremendous plus for India. So along with Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, who are vying for investments alternative China, India is also doing the same. So India also has to compete with these countries because today no foreign investment comes in unless they see in it a value for their investments. And the biggest value apart from money is the environment.
The GVCs are concerned. One, which is a realization among countries that diversity in suppliers is important. So we have seen cases post the pandemic and post the war, during the war is still on, that excessive dependence on another country in terms of the country being a supplier has resulted in supply chain blockages to a lot of firms across the world, big multinationals included. So that was one, and that's the consequence of that was China plus one policy, which a lot of MNCs were looking at. And another implication for GVC post-pandemic was supply chain security, which has become even more relevant as the war goes on. So we have seen that example. Europe's dependence for its energy needs on Russia has led to a situation where there are concerns about supply chain security. So it's not just, so GVC, in today's times, if we talk of global value chains, it's not just about cost competitiveness and where we can get things at the lowest cost from, but as Professor Pant rightly said, geopolitics is very much a part of trade. So we cannot just look at countries in terms of cost competitiveness, we have to look at them in terms of vulnerability that we are exposing ourselves to, and we also have to look at them in terms of the security of our supply chain. All these events have actually created opportunities for a lot of other countries. We all know pre-pandemic, China was one of the major suppliers to most of the multinationals of the world. But post-pandemic, yes, now opportunities are arising. Some countries have already been mentioned, whether it's Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand. India, of course, is one. Now, as far as any country's ambition to become a part of a dominant part of the global value chain is concerned, I believe there is no one standard approach which every country can follow. And therefore, a country's strategy should be to focus on its own capabilities and the unique assets that you possess as a country, which should be leveraged to get integrated into the GVC. And India has its own set of capability and its own set of advantages, which we need to leverage to get integrated into GVCs. Some of them have already been mentioned, so I probably, my talk would be focused just on these 4 or 5 assets, which I will talk about, which could be leveraged if we are looking at becoming a major player in the GVC. So the first one, which was already pointed out, was India being a big market and a huge consumer market. This is not something new. We have been a huge consumer market before as well, competing with China. But post these unprecedented crises, the kind of resilience which the economy has shown, which is evident in the projections which are made by the IMF in terms of projected rate of growth for India, has sort of created a positive investor sentiment for the country. We are a growing market, we have a huge growing middle class, incomes are rising, projections are good for us, and therefore for any company which is contemplating setting up its manufacturing operations in a country, India is a good bet because it's not just about exporting to the other countries, it's also about having a huge domestic market by itself. Professor Pant recently, he just mentioned the example of Apple, for instance. So a wide, huge domestic market has its own role to play in attracting investors into the country and developing the manufacturing base of the country. That is something we need to leverage. Number two, it's about the government push that is being given to manufacturing, some of which again has been mentioned by the preceding speakers. So the government is giving this, whether it's the Make in India campaign, whether it's the Self-Reliant India program, a huge push is being given to manufacturing in India. So we can split it up into individual schemes of the government. For example, the PLI scheme. So scaling has always been a problem because in India, still a large part of GDP and a large part of exports are being met by the MSME sector. So scaling is a problem. In fact, even before pandemic, whenever comparisons used to be made between India and China, in terms of why China attracts 7 times more FDI than India, it was because they had a scale to offer. And to become a part of GDC, you cannot do without offering that scale to a company. So, we need an effort in that direction, and efforts are already being made in that direction through the production linked incentive scheme of the government. Similarly, another must-have for getting integrated into the global value chain is an infrastructure push. Till logistics are in place, we cannot think of getting integrated into the global value chain. So again, our national asset in this case are the new policies which are coming up, be it the Bharatmala project, be it the National Logistics Policy which has been announced by the government, which is again a policy which is going to cut down on overlaps and reduce logistics cost, which is definitely a plus for anyone who's contemplating exporting from India. So that is another asset that we have in terms of a country that yes, in recent times there have been a lot of initiatives which have been taken towards ease of doing business.